Hello guys, welcome to WIX Ideas. In this video, I'm going to continue with the second part of adding a quote calculator into your WIX website. In the first tutorial, I went through the steps of making the design to look this way and to make it similar with the example tutorial that I have made personally to share with you how I achieved the design. And in this video, I'm going to share with you how to add the code and make this entirely functional. Now, before we jump right in, please do well to smash the subscribe button if this is your first time on the channel, and also don't forget to watch out the part 1 in order to know how I achieved this design. In addition, please do well to give this video a thumbs up and also share with other platforms. Now let's get started. Okay, so this is the design that I have, and here in my editor, let's head back to the editor. I'm about to start adding the code. Now, to start adding the code, head over to your dev mode right over here and turn that on. Once you turn that on, you're going to find this code editor. Now, this code editor is where we're going to be writing in our code. So yours might have some pretext, and that is actually okay. Now, I already got rid of the pretext that I have here, and I'm about to start adding my new items. Okay, so let's head into the code. I have left the link to the code below. The first things that we want to add are the libraries. Now, these libraries are the ones we're going to be using with WIX Pay. Now, at the end of the day, we want to be able to collect payment from our customers. Now, if you don't want to be collecting payment, that is totally fine. I will show you a few steps that you might need to avoid. For one, you need to avoid these libraries. You don't need to include these, and in the later sections, you might also want to avoid the last section with WIX Pay and backend code for WIX Pay. You don't need to include these, and your code is good to go. All right, so let's head back. Now I'm going to add these libraries because I want to show you how to use WIX Pay to collect payment from your users. Now we have added these, and I have commented this section out by clicking on Ctrl and /. The reason is because there's an error, and as you can see, there's an error here which I do not really feel comfortable with yet, since we don't have this library. So let's go ahead and comment that out again by clicking on Ctrl / or Command /. All right, so here the next thing we're going to add is our already function. So we're going to copy this already function over here and paste it right into our code. Now the already function makes sure that our code runs when the page elements have loaded. As you can see, we have an error here, and that is because the already function section is not completed. Now this already function ends just right below here, which is right over here. So let's copy the last part of the already function and paste it right in. Now you can see that the code has no error. Let's format that to make sure the code is formatted. Okay, now let's go back up, and I'm going to show you through the first part, which is the declaration of variables. So we're going to copy these declarations and we're going to paste them right into our code. So right over here, I'm going to paste in my declarations. Now, what are declarations, you may ask? So declarations are just variables that you can reuse inside of your code. So for example, the first variable that we see here is a variable that is assigned to an empty array. So this bracket over here indicates an empty array. So what does an array with value look like? An array with value would look like something like this and this. Okay, or anything else can be. It can be just one single value, it could be multiple values, and so on. It doesn't have to be numbers, it could be text as well. So we can have things, if you want to add a text, for example, you need to add your quotes and then add the string inside, and you can do that for as many as you want. You can also go ahead to add numbers inside as well. So what I want to do is that this quote summary over here is an array that is going to hold all the selections that the user has made. So for example, when I start to choose items, you can see that we have this text over here. So what I want to do is to save all the text that the user has selected into an array and then display them on this text. Now you can see once I go over here and choose, you see how that begins to appear. Now the most important thing about an array is that when you add values, so let's go back and add more values. Each of these values have a position that they occupy inside the array. So, and those positions are indicated by what we call the index. Okay, and the first one you can see over here, normally it's supposed to be called the index 1, but no, it's not called the index 1, it's called the index 0. So the first index of an array starts with 0, and then the next one is called 1, index 1. Now you can see from here we have another example and kind of giving us an error, and that is completely understandable. And the reason is because over here, as you can see, we have 0, we have the array itself. So this array, you can see it over here, it is mentioning that we want to insert a value or an item into the first index, which is the 0 index. And as you can see, what we have inserted into the 0 index is this value right here. But let's say you want to insert this into the index 1, so you're going to go ahead and change this to index 1. That means you're going to replace whatever is here, you're going to replace that with this item. Okay, so you're going to see me using a lot of these arrays, and the reason I'm using arrays is because we are dealing with multiple items. So as you can see, we have this one, for example, is a single selection. This also is a single selection. This is a single selection, but this right here is not a single selection, and this also is not a single selection. So as a selection tag, you can see that it is a multiple selection, and we want to be able to save all the selected values into an array and then calculate or display. Now let's move forward. So this is what the quote summary again is for, and then we have the web price array. The web price array is also going to help us save the value that the user has selected from right over here, which is the type of website. So whatever value the user has selected will be saved in that array. And then we have the pages number array. The pages number array is obviously number of pages. It's going to save whatever value the user has imputed here into the array, and we're going to be using that array later on in our code to solve for the total price and also to display what the user has selected. And then we have right here, which we have also discussed. The reason I put this already at the initial part of the code is because I want that when the page loads, I want something to already occupy the first index, which is the index 0. Okay, and that is going to be the regular delivery. So by default, we're supposed to allow this to be selected by default, and the reason is because the user doesn't have to choose that. I just want to show you how to make a default selection and what you can do with your code when there is a default selection. So I went in all around to select the elements that are very common in any quote calculator to show it to you. Your calculator could be simpler than this, yours could be more complex, and what I want to do is to give you the opportunity to make it as simple as you want or as complex as you want. Okay, and finally we have the price. The price is going to be our total price. So after the user has made all the selection and we want to add all the values together, this variable over here is going to hold the total price. Now we're going to move forward to the next section. So let's scroll down to number 2, which is the type of website drop down. So this drop down, we're going to start with this drop down and see how we're going to automate that drop down. So first of all, let us copy this section. Let's copy this code and place it in our website. Now you're going to see this comment just above each of the sections I'm going to cover, and that is going to help you and guide you to know where you are and what you have done. You can see we have a couple of errors. We have the website type drop down, and this is supposed to be the ID of our drop down, which is the only drop down we have, drop down 1. So once you select this item, open up your properties panel, and then here you're going to copy this one with the error and just paste it into your ID from your properties panel. Once you click on enter and click on your page, you can see that the error has been removed. And then you can see we have another variable inside, and the variable is supposed to hold the value of our drop down, and we're going to make use of this variable inside our code, as you can see from here. All right, so now we have some conditional statements, and these conditional statements is kind of letting us know what happens when and what we want to happen. Okay, so if the user, for example, chooses the value 1000, so 1000 is a value from our drop down. Let's take a look. So click on your drop down and manage your choices. Now you can see from here that we have a value. The value here says 1000, and the value here says 1500, and the value here says 5,000. So if the user chooses this value or this option, for example, then what we want to do is that we want to assign a specific kind of text into the index 1 of that array, which is the quote summary array, if you remember from the first section. Now this is the array we are going to work with until the end of the code. So if you can follow with this, you can see that the index 0 is actually holding the value for our regular time or the delivery time, which is this option over here. So this value, whatever value we're going to choose from here, is going to be inserted into the index 0 of our quote summary array. And this is going to be, any value we choose from here is going to be placed in the index 1 of our quote summary array. And we're also going to continue with this. Whatever value the user chooses from here is going to be inserted into the index 2 of our quote summary array. And this is index 3 and this is index 4. So we're going to continue with that sequence until the end of the tutorial. So for this one, which is the website drop down, is going to be inserted into the index 1 of our array. So here we can see that I have a text which says standard website. This is something I totally just wrote by myself. So you can just write any value you want here, whatever you want to be displayed on your quote calculator, which is right over here. As you can see, what you see over here, you can see when I select standard website, which is the $1,000, you can see that a text is displayed here. And when I select the e-commerce, you can see I've selected, you can see what is shown here, which is the e-commerce website. And that is actually what I want to do. I want to customize what it says. And this cookie or the emojis that I actually add is just acting like a separator for each of the selections the user has made. And we can move forward. As you can see, we also have the web price array. Now the web price array again is also the array that holds the price or the value that the user has selected from the drop down, which is right over here. And as you can see, we have placed that value into the 0 index of our web price array. Now you can choose whatever array you want, but we want to make sure that we continue using index 0 or whatever index you choose for the rest of the values. The reason is because we don't want to add more items to the array. We want to only replace what is said inside a specific array. So I chose to use the index 0. You can use index 1 over here, index 1 as well. And here we have a function called calculator. Now this calculator function is the most important of all the functions we're going to be seeing in this tutorial. But before we go on and fix this function, I'm going to walk you through the rest of the conditional statements that we have. So as you can see, else if the user chooses 1,500, then we want to replace what was in the index, which is right over here, with this text. And also we want to replace what is said in our web price array, which is the 0 index, with this value. And then we are calling the calculator function again. So else if the user chooses to choose the advanced, which is the 5,000, the value is what we're working with right over here, which is the 5,000, as you can see, or 1,500 or 1,000. The value is what we're working with over here. Once you're done, you can change any of these values to whatever you want to change it to. And again, we're going to call the calculator. Now else if the user has not chosen anything, we want to use the splice method. Now the splice method is a JavaScript method that allows you to remove a value from a position in your array. So let's say you want to remove something from the index 2 or the index 1 of your array. Then what you do is you indicate what index it is and then how many items you want to remove. So this one over here says the position, and then this one over here says how many items. So as you can see, we are still working with the quote summary array, and for the web type drop down, we are actually working with index 1. All right, so now let's move forward. I'm going to go ahead actually to get the function, which is the calculator function. So I'm going to scroll down until I get the quote calculator function, which is right over here, sum all calculations, which is the step 7. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this right here. So this calculator function over here adds up all the values that the user has selected. So it adds up only the prices. And remember, in the first tutorial where I was making the design, I mentioned that the values here are going to be the prices of your product. So here you're going to see the value. Just add how much it is worth. You don't need to add a $sign. You don't need to add a comma. You just need to add the value as it is, as you can see right over here. So the value is the amount. It's also important for you to know that the WIX drop down value is not a number value. This is a string value. So even though you just add something that looks like a number, it doesn't mean it's a number. It's actually returned as a string or a regular text. So what you want to do is to make sure that it's a number. So as you can see over here, I've made sure that I've converted that into a number. And then we're going to move further into the other section, which is going to be the number of pages. So let's go to the number of pages, and that should be right here. All right, so let's copy this for the number of pages. So copy this and then paste it just below your drop down code. Okay, now we don't have much of an error here because we've added our calculator function, but what we do have is the error for the ID of the element. Now this ID you see here is the number of pages. It's supposed to be for the text input. So let's go back into our page, and here you can see it's called text input. The ID is called text input. So replace this one over here. I've just copied that, replace it over there, and then the error is going to be removed. Now, as you can see, we are using the onInput function, and the reason is because we want the code to begin to run immediately the user begins to type. And as from here, you can see when I begin to type in number of pages, you see how fast that works. Now, the onChange function may not work as pretty well as the onInput, and that is why I have used the onInput method. Okay, so we call the function, the calculator function, to start to calculate immediately the user begins to type. And here you can see that we've also done something else. We have the page number array, and this again we are using the first value or the first position, which is the index 0. So I think I might have missed a portion from the declaration of variables, which is the pages number array. Now I didn't describe what this does. Now here you can see we have another index, which is the index 0 for the pages number. Now this is an array, as you can see from here, but what we did is that at the position 0 we want to assign a value by default, and that value is 1. And the reason why I did this is because when you refresh this page, for example, this is the quote calculator that is already live, you can see that we have 1 selected by default. And when the user begins to select other options, I want that 20 to already be there, and $20 is the price for one single page. Okay, because I have used a default selection. And when you begin to increase, you can see that that is increased by $20, and you can just continue that, and it's going to be increased by $20. And that is the reason why I have actually chosen to have a initial declaration and assigned a value of 1 by default. Now over here, we're going to counter that. We're going to replace whatever value is in the first index of our pages array by the value that the user has actually selected. Okay, and then next we're also going to check a couple of things. We want to make sure that the user is actually selecting values. So whatever value that the user has selected, that is what this statement says, that if the value or the length is greater than 0, then we want to also use the quote summary array, but this time we are using the index 2. And what we want to insert is this text over here, and not missing out many of the part. This text over here is actually embodied inside a template literal. Now a template literal is actually a container that allows you to combine strings and values together. In JavaScript, a value can be anything that has been assigned to a variable. So for example, our page num array over here is also similar to what we have here, and it's assigned to the value of our numbers array. So this is a value, and this over here is a string, because you can typically just change that to anything else. So for example, I want to remove this s, and I want to add brackets, and I want to add a s inside. So this says page or pages, and that is a string. So you can typically just write anything else you want. And this emoji also is a string, it's not a value. And in JavaScript template literal, to write a value inside a template literal, you need to have the $sign, the curly braces, and then add your value inside of the curly braces. So when this displayed, is going to display this icon, and then what the value actually is, and then your string. So let's take an example of how this actually displays. Let's refresh this page, and then let's go over here and increase this by 1. Now once you do that, you can see we have that icon, we have the value, and then we have the string. Okay, so that is just what these values are, and we are inserting that into an array. And then the calculator function is going to be called, and else if no value is selected, we want to remove the value from the index 2, and the index 2 is what we're working with. And then the calculator function is then recalculated, and the new price is being given to us. Okay, now we have the next step, which is going to be for the slider. Now the slider is quite different, and the reason why the slider is different is because we are not going to be calculating the price for that. We are only going to be displaying its own quote summary inside the quote summary array. Okay, so as you can see from here, the code looks shorter, and we have just 2 errors. So let's copy this. This is going to be the ID again. So go back to your page and click on the slider and come over here and replace it. Now once you replace it, you can see we have no error, and we're also using the onChange event. So when the user begins to slide through, we want to also make sure that we display certain value into our quote summary array. Now the first thing we see here is another kind of variable, and the variable is called budget value, and this budget value is assigned to something that looks this way. Now what we are doing over here is that we are actually getting what the user has selected, and we are returning it to display right here. Now you can see we have the budget with this cool emoji here. We have the budget, and then we have the semicolon, and then we have the price. Now this price is displayed as a dollar price. Now the reason is because we are using the local string method in JavaScript, and then we are also making sure that it's going to be the English American format, and the English American format is displayed this way with a comma. Okay, so that this makes it work perfectly. And what we want to do next is to return or assign this value into the new array. So this is the quote summary, and now we're working with the index 3, and then we have a template literal, and then inside the template literal we have this cool $, we have the budget text that I wrote, and then I have the semicolon, and then we have the $, which is actually this $sign over here, and then we have another $, which is to represent a value inside of a template literal using a $sign and curly braces. Okay, and then we have the calculator function. Now I'm going to show you why I have the calculator function even though we're not calculating the price. We're going to get to that section pretty soon. Okay, so let's move on to the next step, and that is for the add-ons. Now this part was quite challenging, and the reason is because it is a multiple selection element, and I have used it on purpose in order to show you how you can use this element. Now the multiple checkbox group and the selection tags are very similar, so the same code can work for the both of them, so you can have as many of these as you want. Now the add-ons and features over here is for the multiple choices, and it's for the checkbox groups. All right, so let's go over here and first of all replace the IDs to get rid of these errors. So let's copy that ID. Make sure you click on your element and then place it the ID right over there. Once you're done, the errors will be disappeared. And again, we're using the onChange event, and over here we have something called the selected add-on, and this selected add-on is going to get the selected indices of this checkbox group, and this brings us back to what the array that I have talked about. Now the multiple choice and the selection tags values are actually saved in an array, and what we want to do is to know what array or what selection the user has chosen. So for example, over here, this one is the index 0, this is index 1, and this is index 2. So we want to know what index the user has selected. So when you click on this, we have selected the index 1, and we're going to save that value in here into the selected add-on. All right, and then next we have another thing that is a variable that is assigned to the value of our multiple checkbox group. Now this looks like a regular declaration or a regular variable, but it's actually an array, and the reason is because this value over here is going to be displayed in an array. And when I begin to test this, I'm going to show you a couple of these things in the console panel. and to show you how these things actually behave. And next we have the for loop, and what this for loop actually does is to run the code in here over and over. So each time the user makes a selection, it's going to rerun and check for these conditions. So we have a condition that says that if the user actually selects 50 from the options, then we want to replace the value that the user has selected with this text over here. That is just all these conditions do, to replace whatever value the user has selected. Now 50 over here, let's go back to our page and go to manage choices. 50 is the value for live chat, 80 is the value for website search, 45 is the value for automated email. So these are the prices as well. So what we want to do is to check what value the user has selected. So that is the great thing about selection elements. Okay, now let's go back in here. So if the user selects live chat, for example, they select the value, then we want to replace this 50 by this word here, live chat. So this selected add-ons here is the index that the live chat appears in that order. So it depends on the user actually, because the user can start selecting from automated email and start selecting live chat. They won't go in from the top down or anywhere. So whatever position that the user begins to select, then we want to get the index of that particular item, the index of where 50 was, and whatever index it was, we want to replace it by live chat. And the same thing also happens when the user selects 80. When the user selects 80, we want to replace that 80 by website search. And we also want to do the same thing for the email. Now the reason why I'm actually doing this is because the WIX multiple checkbox group and the selection tags do not just give you the ability to display their labels easily, and the only way to do that is by using a for loop and also by indicating what index was selected. Okay, so that is what we are doing, and at the end of the day, what we want to do is not forget to include our quote summary. Now our quote summary for the featured checkbox group is going to be inserted into the index 4 of our quote summary array. And again, we're using the template literal. We have the add-ons. I used a gear emoji, which actually quite symbolizes an add-on. And then we have the values that the user has selected. Now I'm using toString, and that is because we want to convert the array into normal strings. Okay, remember that this is an array. Like I mentioned, this is an array, and I'm going to show you this. So I'm going to actually add a console.log here, console.log, and we're going to call this new array over here. So what we're going to do is later on I'm going to show you how this one displays in the console log. So we're going to go over to the selection tags over here, and I'm going to copy the code. This one has most of the code in this tutorial, and the reason is because we are also adding another functionality that allows us to select one item at a time. Now we have the same error, which is the ID of the selection tag. This is the delivery time selection tag. So let's go back to our selection tags over here and replace the ID. Now once you do that, the errors are going to be removed, and this is going to make things a lot easier. Now we see that we have an unchanged event again. So now we have another declaration. We're using the constant for this variable, and we are sending to the value of our selection tag. Now also this is going to be an array. So this is an array because we have multiple selections, and these selections are inserted into an array. And now we also have the selected index, so we're also going to get the indices of what the user has selected, similar to what we have over here. Now before we do that as well, we have also a for loop that is going to allow us to select one item at a time, and we have a set timeout operation that is going to be executed at 1 millisecond. Now everything that is inside of this set timeout is going to be executed in 1 millisecond. So that is fast enough for the single selection to occur and also to replace the values that the user has selected. So remember that we're going to go back into the manage choices. Remember that the delivery for regular is 0, and for 1 week is 50, for 2 days is 100, and for 24 hours is 150. Now we're going to check the value that the user has selected, and again we're going to be working with the selected index, and we are also going to be working with the value itself. So if the user selected a value 0, that is for the regular delivery, then we want to display this one. We want to replace that value in that array with regular delivery. Now you can write anything you want over here and it's going to be replaced easily. Now at the end of the day, that means we're going to also return the value of our selected tag, and that is going to be the new value. Again, we are also making sure to change that to string because it is an array and we want to make it like a normal string. And that is the reason actually why this selection over here is displayed this way, because it has been converted from an array into a normal string. So now we're moving to almost the end of the tutorial, and we have one more section which is for the summary text. Now this is a very short and simple code that only does one thing, and what it does is to combine all of the selections, all of the quote summaries. So this quote is going to convert all of the quote summaries that we had from the drop down, the text input, the slider, and all the elements, is going to join them all together and displayed into a single text. And this text is called the quote summary text, and that quote summary text is the text that displays the details. So let's click on that and change its ID. Now at the end of the day, you're going to notice that this has been fixed. Okay, and I think that brings us to the calculator function. So let's go deep down into the calculator function. All right, so here in the calculator function we have the price. Now this price is a variable that we have already declared in the beginning, which is price. So that means that after the price value has been gotten, we can then use it in the rest of the pages and get what the price value is. So in here, the price value is equal to the sum of all the prices of the elements that we have. So the first one we have is the number, which is for the web price. As you can see, this is a web price array. When you click on it and you scroll up, you're going to see that it's being inserted here, and it's assigned to these values. Now let's scroll down, and what we are doing is to make sure that this is converted into a number. And we're also doing the same thing for the page numbers. We're converting it into a number and then multiplying it by 20. And I'm using 20 because 20 is the cost per page. And then we have the one for the feature checkbox group. And what we are doing is converting the values into numbers, and then we are going to combine them together. Now, since there are multiple items over here, since we can choose multiple items, and these values here are not numbers by default, so we need to convert them to numbers, and then we need to add all the numbers together. So the combination of these three will be added up into a single function. Okay, and the same thing also happens for the selection tags. We are also going to convert it into a number, and then we are then going to combine all the values as they are in the array. Okay, so that is all that the calculator is supposed to do, but we also have a section here that displays the total price. And the first one we have is the total price text. And this text over here, this is the ID. So I'm going to copy that ID and I'm going to place it right over here. Now this is the total text, the total price text. So replace it with the total price text ID. And this is for the payment button. So we're going to also display the price on the payment button. So we're going to click in here, and then we're going to place that over there. Okay, now that has solved all the errors that we have. And I'm also going to explain what is going on here. Now we're also using the template literal. And as you can see, we have the $sign, which is obviously this one. And then we have a second $sign, and that is then preceded by a colibri, which is holding the value. Now this value over here is the price. We have made sure that the price is in numbers, and we have also made sure that it is in the English US format. So that means that it's going to have a comma once we get to 1000. So here we have a comma, and it's going to display this number as in American format. Now if you want to have a different format, let's say you are in a different country, you can go online and check what these formats are. So these are language ISO codes, and you can actually go online and check what language you have and what language you want to be displayed and change it from right over here. And the same thing also happens for the payment button label. Since we're working with the button, it works with the label, and I added a pay and then the amount. Okay, so this kind of makes sense, and it allows the user to actually have an idea of what they are doing. And we're going to move to another section, which is quite a very interesting section. Before we get there, I want to disable this button. So let's go over here and disable. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want the users to be able to select at least one value from each of these elements, and then they can buy the item. But if they don't, then that button is disabled. And that is why I've added a validation code. Now this code is going to check it for us and check if the user have satisfied all of the conditions. If they have not, the button will remain disabled. If they have, it will be enabled. Okay, so I've added all of the IDs previously, and this is a function that I have, and this is the function right over here. I also added an onImpute function and for the numbers, and then we have the function itself. Now this function is quite simple and straightforward. It's just telling us that if the length of our website drop down is greater than 0, that means the user has selected something. And then we have the AND if also the number that the user has selected is greater than 0. And for this budget slider, if the minimum value is greater than 0. Now minimum value means that this value over here, now this is my minimum value, which is 500. So definitely this condition has been satisfied and this code can move forward. And also for the featured checkbox group, now notice I'm not using the value, I'm using the selected indices. So I'm using the indices of what the user has selected to check if it is greater than 0. So that is the reason why here this shows red and the button is disabled. But when I select at least one item from this, it is enabled. If I uncheck the selection tag, it is disabled. And if I select at least one item, it is enabled. And that is just all it is. So if all the selections have been satisfied, enable the button. If not, we want to disable the button. So this is looking good, and we are about to move to the final section of this tutorial, and that is the reset calculator. Now we have an option to actually reset the calculator, and that's why I have this cancel button here. Now this button looks amazing. If you click on cancel, it brings everything back to the way they were, and more importantly, it also selects this option. Now I'm going to show you how to unselect this section, and I'm actually playing around with this to give you a grasp of what you can actually achieve with this code. Now I've copied that section of code to reset the calculator. I'm going to paste it right here, and the only error we have is for the reset button ID. So let's go back there and make sure the cancel button is selected, and then we can successfully change the ID. Now once you click on this button, we want to do a couple of things for the delivery time selection tags. Now this is for the selection tags. We want to make sure that we select the index 0 of the selection tags, and index 0 is the first item. Okay, and then for the website drop down as well, we also want to select the index 0 as well, and the index 0 is for the standard website. And we also have the number of pages, and by default we also want to select 1 as a value, and as you can see, that is what we have here. And we also have the featured checkbox group. Similar to the selection tags, we are also selecting the index 0, which is what was done. Let's cancel again. You can see that that was selected. So let's select multiple items and cancel. That index 0 was selected. But if you don't want any values to be selected, just go ahead and remove the 0, and this should be able to make no selection for this element. And then moving forward, we have also this one for the budget slider. Now 500 is my minimum value, but I decided to select what value I want to be minimum. So you can choose any value, let's say 1500. Later on, you're going to see how that is going to play out. And next, we also have quote summary text. We want the quote summary text to also show this default value. We also want the total price to say this value, and the total price again is this one. So it's going to say what it is by default, which is $0 over here. Okay, so I guess we can go ahead and test this code out. Now let's go ahead and save and then publish these websites and take a look at the preview. If you enjoyed this tutorial so far, please do well to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this. Okay, now we are here and this is about to get started. Now we have no selections. Let's select our standard. Now you can see we have the standard selection for 1000 plus the page, which is over here. And our code summary is already active and we have standard selected. Now let's select another item. Let's say the e-commerce. Now it's been replaced over here and the price is also being replaced. And for the advanced, it's also been replaced and the value here is being replaced. And the total number of pages will begin to increase, and I can actually begin to type in words myself, and you can see once you do that, the value here is equal to the value here, and we have page and pages over here, page or pages. Now this is the amazing beauty of this tutorial. Now this is looking very good, and you can see the price is also displayed on this button. Now when we select this item, let's say we select live chat, you can see live chat was selected and the price for live chat was also added, and so on. We can also select this item. Now notice we can only select one item at a time. I think I need to make the border to be bigger, maybe 2 pixels or 3 pixels, to see the white border that we have for the selection tags. But notice you can only select one item at a time, and when you do that, notice it also changes what is displayed here. Now you can see the delivery time is 1 week selected, or 2 days selected, and so on. Now this is the beauty of it, and what I forgot to do was to actually select this by default. So let's go back and make sure we select the selection tab by default, and while we are here, we also want to make sure that we change the border for the selected to 2 pixels. So let's change that to 2 pixels. I think we can do that from here. Let's change that to 2 pixels. Now that looks much better and really shows that we have selected an item. So let's publish these, and then let's go back to the live site. So we can start from anywhere we want to. We can start from the live chats. Now the price for live chat is $50. Now let me show you that real quickly. From here, the price is $50. But because of the one page we have, 50 plus 20 is 70, and let's choose the website search, which is 80. So let's unselect the live chats and then select the website search. Now that has been updated over there. Now this is the beauty of this tutorial, and I'm going to show you how to get paid once you click on this payment. So let's go into that section, and before we go there, let's preview. I added a code to console.log, and I wanted to show you when you begin to select an item, for example the live chat. Now you can see that we have something here that is displayed inside an array. This is array 1. Now you can see that this is an array, the values are in an array, and once you click on that, we have 2 values now. We click on that, you have 50 and 80, and we have more values that will be shown on the third one. So this is to prove to you that these are arrays. The values here are in an array, and also the values for the selection tags. Now let's go ahead and add the code to our WIX Pay. Now if you don't want to add WIX Pay to your website, you can just skip right from here. Just skip all of these and you're good to go. So what we need to add is this one to our page. So go ahead and copy this to our page, to the page code, which is right over here, and then paste it right there. Now we have an error which says that it cannot find this item, and that is completely understandable because we are missing something else. So we need to create a back-end function, and we need to call that function payment. So let's go to our back-end, go over to public and back-end, and go to your back-end, click on this, and then click on the first option, which is the JSW module. So here we're going to call this payment and hit on enter. Once you've done that, it's going to open up a new dialog for you to write your code, or a new tab to write your code. So go ahead again and copy the last section for this code, and highlight everything, delete, and paste in your new code. Now once you've done that, you're going to go back home, which is the page that displays your page code where your quote calculator is, and we are going to remove the comments that we had to disable this section. Now once we scroll down, you can see there is no longer errors, And let's go ahead again and test this out. So once you're done, make sure to refresh. Now let's scroll down and begin to add our sections. I want 5 pages and my budget is 1,200. I want live chat, I want websites, and I want automated email. Now this lighted up because there is already a selection here by default, and I just want a regular delivery. Once you click on pay, we're going to find a dialog that opens up, but it's going to give us a message that says, thanks for your interest, we are not accepting online payment and method, please contact us directly to complete your purchase. Now to set up payment, you need to go over to your site and to my dashboard. And this is not a free thing. Wix allows you to set up payment for some fee, and you need to have a live site, and you also need to have a certain kind of plan in order for you to accept payment. So let's go over to upgrade and let's take a look at Wix plans. So for Wix plans, before we go to the editor to the dashboard, let's take a look at the Wix plan that we need. We don't need the websites. You need to have the business and e-commerce plans to have secure online payments plans and recurring payments. So you can only accept payments using any of these plans. So you can accept using maybe the basic plan, which is $17 per month for monthly subscriptions. And if you want to go ahead to set up payment, you need to go over to settings, and you need to scroll down to e-commerce and finance and go to accept payments. Now once you are there, you're going to be able to choose multiple payment methods that you have, but as you can see from here, it says start accepting online payment today by upgrading to a premium plan. So before you can actually achieve this, you need to have a premium website. But once you have a premium website, just come back here and choose any of the payment methods that you want. Depends on the country where you are, and you have multiple payment options. So that is what you need to do. Once you're done with that and you apply the code, you are good to go, and your users can actually buy or check out from this single page. Now this is how you add a quote calculator into your Wix website. I hope you really did enjoy this tutorial. Please do well to subscribe to my channel, and also let me know in the description below of what kind of calculator you want me to make, and I'll also make sure to make a tutorial like that. So thank you very much, and see you in the next video.